By the way, let me show you a quick shortcut for imports. You can just hover over it and import as you need to. If you're importing a bunch of stuff from the same libraries, though, it turns out there's an easier way to do this. So notice that both container and grid layout come from java.awt. What I can do instead of using the names of this is I can just say java.awt.star, the asterisk symbol, and that'll import everything from AWT. Similarly with javax.swing, I can say javax.swing.star, and I no longer have to do imports for anything else from that library. That'll help make your imports a little faster. So now if I use JLabels, JText fields, whatever else, I don't have to import them anymore because I'm importing everything. All right, so far, just to kind of quickly review this, I've got a frame out here. I've got a two-dimensional array of buttons, a grid of integers, which, since this is an int, that's filled in with zeros by default. Primitive types are always zeros or false or whatever it is. Container, which is my north, and a playing field for which is also a container. I'm setting the size of my frame, setting the frame's layout. Setting the layout for the north, I need to eventually put north into the frame. In fact, let me do that now. So I'm going to add north to the north part of the frame. And now I'm going to alter the playing field to be the thing that gets all the buttons. So whereas frame was adding the buttons before, now I'm going to say playing field. Now, playing field has got all the buttons, but it's still sitting out in space. I need to add that to the middle of the frame. So I say frame.add playing field to border layout.center. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of piecemeal constructing all of the various pieces I need for the window. I have a container, which is the north side of everything. I've got a container for my playing field. The playing field is going to get added to the middle of the screen. All the other stuff is going to be added to the top. Typically, the way that you do this is you always say set the layout of whatever it is, and then add things to that. If I take a look at what this looks like now, this looks exactly like I had before. Except, if I add something to the north, so let's add a J label, because we haven't done that yet. X wins. So if I add that in, and add that to north, so those two lines there, notice that now I've got it up in the north. So all this stuff has to do with just setting up how it looks. This is all about layout right now. None of this functions yet. You can click on buttons all you want and nothing will happen other than a change in colors. But this is the beginnings of how to lay out a frame. You can put containers inside of containers to your heart's content and use different ones for each one. You just have to make sure that you add them all back in so eventually they add up in the frame. So the frame is the main layout. You set its layout and then add everything into that. And the things you add into it could be other containers which have stuff in them. So other things that you can put into a container. So I just showed you a J button. I showed you a J label, which is just text. You can also have a JText field, which is a place where you can put your mouse into the cursor into it and actually start typing text into it. There's a text area, which is a multiple line text field. You can put in checkboxes, where you just click on the checkbox to turn it on and off. There are radio buttons, where when you click one, it deselects the rest of them. So all of those things you can put into a window. And eventually, we'll even start drawing on the window itself. So when we get to some of the simulations and games later on, we'll actually start drawing on the window. So let's see. Hey, look, I've got another window open. So I should probably take this label here and make sure that everybody can talk about it. Something I should mention is called scope. So the scope of this X wins. Because I declared it in here, it only lives in this constructor. So if I talk about X wins out here somewhere else, it won't know what I'm talking about because it only lives this long. Whereas if I declare things out here, like frame, I can talk about the frame out here in another method if I wanted to. These things which are out at the level of the class are called fields, generally. These are all your variables and objects that the entire program needs to know about. Sometimes you'll hear me call them global. So global variables. These are things that the entire class knows about. This is called a local variable in here. Once I'm done with this method, that variable goes away. And in fact, I and j are also local variables. J only lives this long. I only lives through this for loop. And then it gets thrown away. All right, let me go ahead and take this J label. I'm actually going to move it out with the rest of these things because I'm going to want to talk about it later on. I still add it in the constructor, but I can actually just move it out here so that I can talk about X wins and other methods. For example, when we actually check to see if somebody won or somebody tied, we can set the label. All right, I'm going to finish setting this up, so I'm going to put in another J label. J label O wins. It's a new J label. O wins is going to start at 0. I think I'm going to put in another J button, which is going to be change name. Let's see, change name. And a JText field. Name field. So after I add in X wins, I should add each of those other things. There we go. So we have all those 4 components up at the top.
I'm not sure what's going wrong here, but when I run it, I get this, and I've looked at your code.
Okay. All right, so at this point, I want to check on other people's code and see if everybody's gotten at least some of the layout done. My goal is that by the end of class, everybody's got at least the layout set up, and then we can take a look at actually implementing it after that.